Well, coming up on today's show, Daimler's CEO resigns and sort of steps upwards, actually. But he hands over to someone with electric car form. One of the Musks, positive on Model 3 deliveries, but not brother Elon. And version 9 software gets a very warm reaction. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. Hello and welcome to the Thursday, the 27th of September edition of EV News Daily. It's Martyn Lee here with the news you need to know about electric cars and the move towards sustainable transport. Thank you to myev.com for helping to make this show, where you can buy, sell and learn and research about used EVs. It's the first marketplace specifically built for finding out more, buying and selling electric cars. Well, this here is show 248. By the end of the week, we'll be on show 250. I'm no maths expert, but I think we're 2 shows away. Well, every 50 shows or so, we've updated the kind of features, the scripts, what works, what doesn't work, added our question of the week. If you have any comments and suggestions and feedback, email me directly. I love giving you my email address because then people email the show directly and I can reply. It is hello@evnewsdaily.com. Well, let's kick off with the big news in the industry today, and that is the Daimler CEO resigning / stepping upwards to hand over to a new era there. There's change at the top of Daimler. What does it mean for electric cars, though? Let's find out. Well, in brief, Dieter Zetsche has been elected as a member of the Supervisory Board from 2021 onwards. But there has to be a 2-year period before then, and stepping down from his current role is required sooner rather than later, which is why he's doing it. So Dieter Zetsche steps down as CEO to be replaced by a long-term exec from the R&D part of the company. Now that includes all the work they've been doing on electric cars. You were there before me. Well, TechCrunch says that Daimler's picked Ola Källenius, I think that's how I would say his name, and to head up Mercedes-Benz vehicles and Daimler, the first non-German, actually, to hold the top spot. Källenius most recently headed up research at Daimler and development at Mercedes-Benz Cars. His appointment comes at an interesting and transformative time for maker of Mercedes-Benz vehicles and Daimler trucks. The old business of building them, financing them and selling them is changing rapidly for existing automakers as many of them look at new ways to make profits, things like new electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, mobility and all those kind of things, transport as a service, those kind of units including car sharing and ride hailing, all really exciting opportunities but all very disruptive. So a new leader taking that company forward into a new era. Of course they are the biggest maker of luxury vehicles in the world in terms of sheer numbers. Moving on to Tesla and brother Musk, that would be Kimball Musk. He, of fond persuasion of a cowboy hat when you see him on TV, has been talking about Model 3 deliveries, and he says this, and I quote, "I think that if you have a Model 3 and you'd like it delivered, we could probably get it done for you by the end of the week. So, if we haven't reached out to you, reach out to us. I do know the company's working very hard to focus on deliveries. We want to respect all of the government processes to make sure all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted, and we're doing all the right things," end quote. So, I guess what he's not saying there is to the hundreds of thousands of people that have placed a deposit and are waiting in queue, in the line, please call us tomorrow. Here's our personal number, because clearly they would be swamped. And that's not what he's saying. I think what he's saying there is if you're waiting for a Model 3, they might have one for you if you can be flexible. So, of course, he's also a board member, so he knows what he's talking about. Tesla has increasingly been taking the tack, which is those of other automakers over the years. And actually, those automakers that have been incredibly critical of the way Tesla were doing it, building cars to order so much in the past. Now, Tesla have been increasingly making stock, doing runs of common configurations, and then finding buyers in their waiting lists that match it, right? That's why some people who have ordered later get their cars sooner. And some of those day one reservation holders, a lot of them holding out, of course, for 35,000 short range models, not the long range. However, that's why some people are having to get in their cars sooner or later. It's new for Tesla, and it's frustrating for some people who are waiting in line. I get that on the forums and on places like Reddit. Others can come along and get a car almost immediately if they are willing to accept one of the cars that's been built on a run of common configurations. And I get that's frustrating. On the other hand, you are waiting for one of the best cars ever produced for $35,000, which will do over 200 miles of real-world range, and you're going to have it soon. They're going to start making them in the first part of next year. So, I understand there's a little bit to whinge about, and I also would say you've been patient so far. If you do want the base model, not long to wait, you know? I get your frustrations, though. Staying with Tesla, and version 9 of the software is getting a very warm reaction from people who have already got it in their cars. On Twitter today, I've seen a growing number of Tesla owners who are part of the early access program with access to the version 9 update. Many owners posting pictures of what their screens look like now. One of the most striking is the blind spot notifications and the icons on the screen using all the cameras which show the location of vehicles around you. In a Model 3, trucks look like trucks, motorbikes have a little motorbike symbol, and other cars look like, well, you know, this update, no longer the Tesla outline, they actually look like other cars. The update is a visual homogenization for S and X owners with Model 3. Firstly, by the end of this week, the mass rollout should begin, barring any bugs. Model 3 owners also get a web browser, which they've been waiting for, calendar synchronization, and early people using that, so the web browser certainly is pretty snappy. Well, Electrek says, just to recap, by the way, where we are with version 9, as we previously reported, the update includes a new Drive on Nav feature for autopilot, which brings capabilities similar to the on-ramp, off-ramp feature that Tesla promised with the release of enhanced autopilot. The autopilot UI, the user interface, is also getting an update in the instrument cluster. Musk said that Tesla's finally going to release its dashcam feature using autopilot cameras in version 9. Finally, the update also includes the promised classic Atari games that Musk said would be included as Easter eggs. And if other Easter eggs that have been in their cars, like making the Model X dance at Christmas, we know they're going to be really fun. Well, Tesla says about this new dashcam feature, you can now record and store video footage captured by the car's forward-facing camera onto a USB flash drive. Note you must manually add a base-level folder to the flash drive. If you call it Tesla Cam, this little folder, you can do that and record footage from the dash cam, and you need to look at the owner's manual for full details on that if you are affected. Well, meanwhile, Panasonic, the sole battery supplier for Tesla, one of the closest partners that Tesla's ever worked with, perhaps the closest, you could argue, for the best-selling Model 3, making the 2170 cells. They're now taking steps to help Elon Musk solve his production hell problem. Although, actually, maybe the writer of this Bloomberg article needs to know that they're in delivery hell at the moment. But anyway, production hell is what they call it. It says they have plagued the car since the beginning of its production, trying to make profits. According to this Bloomberg article, the Japanese company Panasonic has proposed to add 3 production lines at the Gigafactory in Nevada by the end of the year. It's now aiming to complete the plan ahead of schedule. Yoshio Ito, the head of Panasonic's automotive business, said in an interview today in Tokyo that they are ahead of schedule. He wouldn't specify, though, an exact date for opening these new production lines. They will be there to feed the Model 3. And if they're making 2170s, does that mean it's potentially also feeding power walls and power packs? I'd love to know. Panasonic produces cells, which Tesla uses to make its battery packs for its EVs, the little cylindrical cells, the 18650s and the 2170s, which are significantly larger, actually, when you see them two side by side, the two cells. Now, the 3 new lines are going to bring the total to 13, with a combined capacity of 35 gigawatt hours every year at the Gigafactory, up from the current 20. DS Automobiles are getting ready to present 4 electrified models at the Paris Motor Show, which starts on the 4th of October. Many of my favourite journalists who I follow on Twitter, I see are heading along to that, and I'll be keenly following, not going there myself, but keenly following everything that's happening on those press days. One of the most interesting cars they're going to be covering is the new DS, the DS3 E-Tense. It's the world premiere for the car. It's 100% electric, and it's going to be on sale in the second half, so after summer of 2019. Advanced level of performance, they say, without compromise. 200 miles on the WLTP test cycle, which I think is probably, I said this yesterday or the day before on the podcast, I think it's probably sort of within 10-15%. It's still optimistic. It's not like the EPA range that's bang on, but I think it's pretty much there. So expect real world range a bit like, I guess, 40 kilowatt hour Renault Zoe on that. It's about 160, 180 miles as on the standard, and there's 20% of energy they're hoping to recapture through regen and recuperation. 0 to 30, which is an interesting time to give. 0 to 30 in 3 seconds, 0 to 60 in 8.7. 8.7 isn't exactly what I would call rapid. It's probably all the speed you need if you're driving your car normally. But remember, they say in this press release, it's going to come with an advanced level of performance. 8.7 seconds, well, you're not going to be beating Nissan Leafs off the line for a start. Right, BYD have been investing millions in EVs and batteries, not just in China, but in America as well, and somewhat under the radar. They've not exactly been hiding it because they've been buying up huge chunks of land and employing plenty of people, but because they're not selling actual cars to compete with the likes of Tesla, for some reason, BYD somewhat go under the radar. For many years, they've said that they're going to be selling cars in the US, but they've, for various reasons, never have on a large scale. They have been investing a lot of money. 53 million is the most recent investment as part of a $250 million investment in the U.S.A. to build electric vehicles and sell them in North America. They currently have 820 employees there. Well, Stephen at Inside EVs says that the newest investment is now on a 100,000 square foot warehouse in Lancaster. It's going to cost $5 million, and it's another little piece of the investment they're making. It's going to further their presence in the US. That particular facility will lead to efficiency and production capability when they ramp up their pure electric buses they make in America. Well, BYD said this: we have the capacity to produce 1,500 pure electric buses a year, which will go a long way to creating a cleaner climate and a quieter, more efficient way to travel. Well, final story today, and it comes via... Actually, I've got 2 more stories I think we'll have a look at. We've got time today. First of all, there's a new study from here in the UK that EVs and plug-ins are going to increase dramatically in the next 2 years. Wow, what a great study. As if we didn't know that. But thank you for doing a study. The study's been done by CarWow, and CarWow are a very useful resource. I'm only being cheeky here in the UK. I guess to you and I, yes, it's kind of obvious that, of course, it's going to increase. 1 in 3 car buyers are looking for a plug-in hybrid option. That goes up, though, when you ask millennials. If you ask a millennial what kind of car that they would buy, it goes up to almost half of all of them want to buy a green car by 2020. They surveyed 2,034 motorists. That's a pretty good sample size. You can start to draw some good conclusions from a sample size of 2,000 people. I guess it kind of matters where you ask as well, because if there's 2,000 people in London, for instance, where car ownership with young people is lower. A lot of people using Uber for a start. Every 20-something I work with, by the way, in London uses Uber just all the time. They'll stand on the side of the road and watch 3 cabs go past with the light on whilst waiting for an Uber, which is mad. But anyway, and there's a lot of car sharing and things like that, and they only use a car when they need it. I guess if they'd ask those 2,000 people not in London and somewhere that's more geographically diverse, where car ownership is more of a thing that you have to have just to live your life every day because public transport isn't as good as big cities, well then that would skew the figures, but we'll go with what they've said for now. CarWow's Chief Operating Officer Andrew Hooks said this: as an industry barometer dealing with more than 6,500 inquiries every month, we've seen demand for electric and plug-in hybrids increase significantly across UK's major cities as consumers are becoming more aware of green alternatives. I'll put a link to that article in the show notes. And finally today, from our friends at myev.com, brilliant new article went live today, written by a great writer, actually. I've seen his stuff on Motor One as well, Jim Gorzolany. I think that's how I say his name. Jim's been writing about America's most electrifying cars. That would be, of the 114,000 full electric vehicles sold in the first 8 months of this year, how many of them have been sold and which ones are in the top 5? Well, he says add in the plug-in hybrids as well and you get to about 190,000 cars in the first 8 months of this year. But still, what's going to be in the top 5? Well, do you think you know what might be number 1? how quickly has that Model 3 been selling? Because if you say, oh, whoa, where is it in the top 5? It's a good question. Let me tell you the answer. In number 5 was the Nissan Leaf. They registered 9,123 sales in the first 8 months of 2018. In North America, according to Inside EVs. In 4th place, the Chevrolet Bolt EV, which is a car that I know I need to talk about more for my American listeners, but you have to understand it's not even on sale in, no right-hand drive versions. It has been sold in Europe in tiny amounts, and it's like a blind spot for me. I forget the Bolt. It's a brilliant car, and I know I need to talk about it more. I've never driven one myself, and I know lots of people who own them are huge fans of them. I just kind of forget to talk about them as much as I should do. Right, the top 3. 3rd place, Tesla's Model X. 2nd place, the Model S. And, well, there can only be one number 1. But yes, it has got there already. In the first 8 months of this year, the Model 3 is the nation's top-selling EV. 55,000 units, 55,882 actually, sold in 2018 till the end of August, according to the Inside EV figures. I love their monthly sales scorecard. It's always incredibly well researched, if you haven't checked that out yet. And it is the number 1 car so far this year, and it's not going anywhere from that top spot for a very, very long time. I'll put a link to that My EV article in the show notes. And I was catching up with some of the gang from My EV earlier this week, which if you didn't hear me mention on yesterday's podcast, it was nice to sit down with them and have a natter, have a chat and hear about their plans, which sound super exciting, and all of which I'm sworn to secrecy. So I'll stop talking now before my mouth gets me in trouble. Right, onto the community section of the podcast, which I'm loving this week, by the way. It's super interesting. Here's the question of the week. How do you charge at home? What charger have you got? Who installed it? Was it something that came with a new car, or did you organise it? Did you install it yourself if you're qualified? And if you want to share, and this is not compulsory, if you want to share, how much did it cost? What did you spend? Did you get incentives? Well, there are 85 patrons of the show on patreon.com/EV News Daily. And if you want to get any of the shows for free, because they fund this show, by the way, and they provide this show for free for everybody else. You can be one of them if you want to. 247 of those shows online for free right now. Thank you to our Patreon supporters for making that happen, to enable that archive to stay online for free. The blog's evnewsdaily.com. On the socials, just search EV News Daily. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow.